Welcome to 5 and 5. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Isle of Cats, specifically the solo mode. No disclaimer for this one, I bought my own copy. I'd never really played many Polyomino games in the past, but with my recent enjoyment of things like Kingdom Rush, I'm getting more interested in the genre and mechanic as a whole. How does Isle of Cats do with it? So first for my number 5, I'm going to start at a pro, and this is kind of cheating, but for this one I want to talk about the wide variety of play options in the box. So this is less part of the solo review and more a review of the package as a whole, but I really like how many play modes come in this. You've got the solo mode, which works really well. We'll get into some of the cool specifics with that. You've got the sort of full gamer mode, where you're drafting cards against each other, probably the most balanced and least random of the modes, and really fulfilling. And then one that I've really enjoyed, you have the family mode, which basically takes away the majority of the card play and just focuses on a fun, quick polyomino puzzle. I played that with my family, with my sons. They love it, just kind of building their puzzle pieces and trying to score in a simple way. And the fact that this one game, which even though it's a big box, is not really that expensive when you look at the prices online, has so many play options that all work really well, it's a winner right off the bat. My number 2 is also a pro, and that's the core drafting mechanic in the game. So basically, after you start each round, you're going to get 7 cards in your hand. And how it works is you draw 5 and you pick 3. You draw 5 more, you pick 3, and you draw a final one to get your 7. And those cards will come into your hand, but you don't actually have them to use yet. Each one will have a cost in fish. You get 20 at the beginning of each round, and you need to judge how much you are willing to pay for the cards to actually keep them for play. So out of the 7, you might only use, 3 or 4 of them. And the fish you don't use on those cards are what you're going to use to get the cats you're going to be filling on your ship in the polyomino puzzle. It's very fast playing, but it provides nice tactical choices in a very simple and streamlined mechanic. And my number 3, another pro, is focused on the polyomino placement of your cats and treasures itself. And I know this is a polyomino game, so it might seem weird that this is only my number 3, but I do want to say that it is a lot of fun. I like kind of putting these shapes together, the cats themselves are adorable, and the puzzle is a little bit more interesting than it would be just filling a space, because you want to get the same colored cats together, you want to cover up these specific spaces, and then you have to make the call of whether you're going to try to fill these rooms fully to avoid some negative points or not. If you don't fill them fully, you can really spread out quickly. If you do fill them fully, you have to kind of perfectly match up the pieces well. When you get that exact shape in just the right spot, it's so satisfying. So I like polyominoes in general, and this is a nice implementation of the core mechanic. But with my number 2, we get to my only con for the game, but it might be a pretty big one based on what you're looking for, especially in solo, and that is how random and swingy the game can be. The drafting cards I already talked about. In the solo mode, you're only going to see a certain number, and you don't have kind of the natural internal balancing you would have in multiplayer, where if I get weak cards, my other players are seeing the same cards too. No, you might sometimes get handed the perfect cards in round 3 or 4 or 5 that go exactly with your strategy and just help you get a ridiculous score at the end. Or you might get stuff that does not gel at all, and you're just throwing away cards left and right, and there's no way to really mitigate that in the solo play. On top of that, your AI opponent will have some cats be worth more negative points than others, some colors of cats, and you don't know which ones they are. And if you happen to find that the cat that you've invested in quite a bit ends up being worth a lot of negative points, like it gets revealed in the 3rd round, that can majorly affect your score too. So the game is very fast, and it doesn't feel too negative that the randomness is so high in solo, but just be aware that your score may be very high or very low based on things totally out of your control. And you kind of got to make peace with that if you're going to fully enjoy the solo game. But here is my number 1, and it's a big pro for me, and it kind of contributes to the randomness, but in such a satisfying way, and that's the solo lessons and those color values that I talked about, where some cats are worth more negative points than others. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to give your AI rival 3 lesson cards, and you can add in more to increase the difficulty, and they'll have these very big penalties for doing this or not doing that, covering up rat spaces, not putting cats on the edge of the boat, things like that. And that combined with the colors of cats that you want to avoid and the ones you want to go for are going to drastically change how you build out your ship, what kind of things you try to get, what your score is going to look like. I'll compare it very favorably to something like Sprawlopolis, where you look at these goal cards, and even if they aren't entirely balanced each time, they really strongly make each game have its own unique identity and give each game its own variety. Overall, I think you might love Isle of Cats if you'll play it with casual gamers and with heavier gamers, because again, it has those two modes you can go with. I think solo play is a lot of fun as well. So if you think you'll get at least two of those modes working for you, this is a great value of a game. That's the number one thing I want to emphasize. But on top of that, if you enjoy polyomino tile laying, if you like Sprawlopolis or other games with very changeable objectives where you really have to kind of match your play to the puzzle, this one might really appeal to you. But the big thing you want to consider, especially if you'll mainly play solo with this one, is that it can be very swingy and your score won't be entirely in your control. If you're not okay with that, you might want to avoid this because it is going to rear its head almost constantly in the solo play. And if you want to see a full playthrough of solo and watch all this stuff in action, click the link that just popped up. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.